This is ASMR to the G. Before we begin our video, let's get all the non-video stuff out of the way. Number one, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, I would love it if you did so we can grow our little family here on YouTube. Number two, I'm filming during the day, so there is a lot of outside noise. I apologize, but I am off this week from work, and since the kids are in school, I'm trying to record as many videos as I can for you guys so that we can have them as backups. Number three, my husband is also off, and he's gonna be home soon from doing some grocery shopping, so you might hear some noise when he gets home. I've asked him to try to be as quiet as he can because I'm recording, but he's never quiet, so I'm gonna apologize in advance. Okay, let's get to the video. Today we're gonna be continuing our book, The Wrong Girl. I can't remember which part we are at, but we are on chapter number 5. So let's continue our book. I awoke as someone laid me gently on a bed. Pallid, I realized as I fought to lift my eyelids. It was my bed. The mute servant crossed the room and shut the curtains. Then he left the room. The loud click of the door being locked was followed by complete silence. If I hadn't strictly been a prisoner before, I was now. I was too exhausted to care. I closed my eyes and lay on top of the bed. It felt strange not to have Vi with me, caressing my hair until I returned to myself. It was pleasant not to wake to the smell of singed wool, however. As soon as I thought it, I wished I hadn't. No smoldering wool meant no Vi. Could she be cured now that I wasn't there? Would she be cured now that I wasn't there? She only ever started fires when I had a narcoleptic episode, so it was entirely possible that she would never have another one again now that I was gone. Or would some other trigger take my place? I blew out a breath and tried not to give in to the overwhelming sadness. I did give in to the tiredness and still dragged at my limbs and fell back into sleep. I woke sometime later with the strong sense that someone was watching me. It took my eyes a moment to adjust to the dim light when they did, I saw Jack sitting on a chair nearby. He stiffened when he realized I was awake. There's tea on the table beside the bed. It's probably gone cold by now. I sat up and gratefully sipped the tea. It was indeed cold, but I didn't care. My mouth and throat were dry. I drained the cup and refilled it from the teapot. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like a prisoner." He leaned back in the chair and stretched out his long legs, crossing them at the ankles. He crossed his arms too and regarded me through half-lowered lashes. Half-lowered lashes, lowered lashes. August is furious that you tried to escape. He's not the only one with a temper. I can see that, he said with a sardonic tilt of his lips. "Why did you try to leave, Violet? I thought we went through this. I thought you understood that you would come to no harm here." I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and sat up. "You'll forgive me if I don't believe a word you say. I find it hard to trust the man who kidnapped me. Even harder to trust the man who sits up there and makes it very clear I'm not to question his authority or my predicament." He rubbed a hand through his hair, upsetting his neat arrangement and causing it to tumble over his forehead. "I understand your need to know what's going on. Believe me, I do. But I can assure you in this case it's black and white. If you agree not to try to escape, he'll allow you to go about the entire state and into the village with Sylvia and me. I cocked my head to the side and regarded him. What makes you think I'll try not to escape after promising not to? Because I'm going to strike a deal with you. You may leave Frankenheim by Christmas. You should be able to control your talent by then, and will have no need of me anyway. I'll even drive you back and smooth things over with Lord Wade. He huffed out a breath, or tried to. It was a wonderful notion, except for one major problem. What if I make absolutely no progress by Christmas? Not even a little bit. Will you still let me go home? He shrugged. Of course. By the dismissive way he said it, I got the feeling he didn't consider it an option. Then I agreed to remain here until then. I'm just gonna wait for the plane to pass. Oh boy, that's a long one. Okay. Then I agreed to remain here until then. After all, Christmas was only 5 weeks away. I could pretend that my talent, as he called it, had gone into hibernation until then. He gave a firm nod. Good. I'm glad we can help each other out. Perhaps August won't want to rip my head off next time I walk into his rooms. He blames you for my attempted escape. I was the one who convinced him you would stay once you realized we meant no harm. He gave me a lopsided smile. It seems I didn't quite understand you as much as I thought I did. I'm glad to hear I'm not so predictable. He stopped smiling. Indeed, his forehead creased into a frown. You haven't asked how he is. Your uncle, why should I? I assume he's still angry, perhaps a little surprised too. You're right on both counts. Your unconsciousness was certainly unexpected. I'll go and talk to him again and tell him you've agreed to stay. I made to rise, but he waved me back. No, don't get up. Rest. If you don't mind, I'll send Sylvia in. She's been desperate to see you, but I made her wait. I'd like to see her too. I was startled to realize it was the truth. I didn't want to be alone. Sylvia's company would be a pleasant diversion. Jack left and his cousin breezed past him as soon as he opened the door. Okay, what's happening with all the airplanes today? It's very busy. She must have been waiting outside. Thank goodness you're all right. She clasped my hands. I was so worried about you when I realized you'd run away. You didn't even know I was gone until Pollard brought me back. She glanced at the Thornley and close to whisper. Yes, well, I grew worried when I saw Pollard dragging you in and holding that shovel. She shuddered and closed her eyes. Does he often go into the woods with gardening implements? I don't think so. brothers. Who? Your father, Jack's father, and your uncle. Otherwise you wouldn't all share the same name. Yes, of course they were brothers. She returned to looking out the window. I expected her to keep talking since she seemed like the sound of her voice. She seemed to like the sound of her own voice, but she said nothing further. Is Pollard a genuine mute? I asked. She came back to sit on the bed beside me. He's been that way for as long as I've known him, so he was born that way. She shrugged. Let me guess. Don't ask him. Good Lord, no. She pressed a hand to her breast. Please don't. He couldn't answer me even if I did. We both giggled but quickly stopped because it seemed a little cruel, although I wasn't sure Pollard deserved our sympathy. Don't worry, I said. I won't try to learn his secrets. The rest of the secrets harbored within Frankingham's walls were fair game, and I planned to uncover them before I left at Christmas. Beginning with what Jack knew about his condition and how he and Vi had come to be fire starters. Sylvia suddenly hugged me so hard that I had to put out a hand to steady myself. I'm so relieved you've agreed to accept your situation and stay, she said, blinking back tears. It'll bring some peace and quiet to the house at last. Whatever do you mean? I suppose you couldn't hear them from in here, but Jack and Uncle August argued over what to do with you as soon as Jack returned. Uncle wanted to keep you imprisoned in this room, but Jack refused to train you if that happened. Their voices became so loud I could hear them from downstairs. Uncle was still terribly upset by the break-in, you see, and then your attempted escape, and now this. He was most shaken. Jack didn't back down. Oh no, he was most, vehement in his response. I think Uncle grew quite afraid of him after his own temper cooled and just gave in. That surprised me until I remembered what Jack was capable of. It was a good reminder that Jack Langley was not to be crossed. If his uncle feared what he'd do, then so must I. I'll have to remember to thank him, I said. I doubt he wants thanks for doing something he sees as right. He has the strongest morals, my cousin. Odd, really, considering his past. Anyway, she clasped my hands in both of her own. You and I will become great friends, you know. I know it. It's only until Christmas. As soon as I said it, I wish I could take it back. Her face fell. Her smile wobbled and finally slipped off altogether. Her hands retreated back to her lap. Oh, of course. She stood and smoothed down the front of her skirt. Only until Christmas. I hope there'll be many opportunities for us to go into the village together before then. That seemed to appease her somewhat, and her face lifted. That's if Jack's training isn't so rigorous that he'll keep you all to himself. The thought rather thrilled me, but I didn't think Sylvia needed to hear that. Training began immediately after luncheon. Jack took me to a room on the first floor that had horribly familiar furnishing arrangement. It was bare except for a table, 2 chairs, and a lot of woolen rugs and hangings covering every inch of wood. 3 pails of water stood near the fireplace, as they did in every attic at Windermere. It was the strangest thing to be in a similar room at another house that it quite took my breath away. I'm sorry it's not more comfortable, Jack said. That's all right. But why the caution here? My bedroom isn't set up like this, nor are the parlor or other rooms. uneasy, but I suddenly felt as if Jack knew my every thought. Those green eyes drilled into me, and I eventually had to sit down and avoid his gaze altogether. If I hadn't, I may have found myself telling him everything. Jack, forgive me, but you seem to know very little about this affliction, I said rather boldly, considering my weakened knees and racing heart. It's not an affliction, don't ever call it that, Violet, or people will see you as a candidate for the asylum. He sat in the other chair without taking his eyes off me. Fear, you said. Fear for your loved ones. But that doesn't quite make sense. Firstly, I thought you had no loved ones at Windermere. I had a companion. He nodded slowly. I saw her with you on our walks. Hannah Smith, isn't it? Hearing him say my name for the first time shook me to the core. You've not answered my question, I said. You're right. I know only my own case. I'd assumed yours was exactly the same. How did we get this way? He shrugged. I don't know. I've been like this for as long as I can remember, so I suppose I was born with it. You? The same. Do you know anyone else who can set things alight? No, he shook his head slowly. I admit I don't understand why it's only you and I. How did you become aware that Lady Violet Jameson was like you? Considering I've been locked away for so long, it could hardly have been local gossip. Not even the servants knew. Are you sure they didn't? If you had servants attending your rooms at all, then they would have seen the burn marks and formed a conclusion of their own. Yes, but the right conclusion. That is rather a big leap to take, don't you think? Another shrug, but he made no further comment. So was it gossip that made you aware of me? His gaze shifted away. August told me about you. Your uncle, how did he learn of my existence? I don't know, he wouldn't say. I see. When did he tell you? A brief smile touched his lips. The day before I came to Windermere as a new gardener. I couldn't start quickly enough once I heard. You were that eager to spy on me, of course. I thought I was the only one like this. I thought I was alone. He raised his gaze to mine, and heat shimmered down my body all the way to my toes. Do you know how relieved I was to find out about you? How happy. He gave me a grim smile. Yes, I suppose you do. My breath came in shallow bursts, so that my next words came out as a whisper. But you weren't alone. You had your uncle and Sylvia. It's not the same, isn't it? I was genuinely curious. Is that how Vi felt, all alone despite having me for company? It explained her melancholy and all those forlorn cases out the window. Not nearly the same. His murmur vibrated through me. He spoke as if I were the only person in the entire world who could ever understand him. And that was a heady, thrilly thing. To be cherished by such an enigmatic, handsome man would make any woman giddy. I would not let it affect me. I was all too aware that I was not the only one who understood him. It was Vi. She deserved his attentions, not me. I felt quite terrible that I was responsible for keeping them apart in a way, yet I felt even more terrible at the jealousy brewing inside me. A very big part of me wanted to keep this man to myself. So, I said, in an attempt to shatter the thick silence that enveloped us, you said your uncle told you about me. He did. He shifted in the chair, stretching his long legs to the side away from me. The movement did indeed break the last remaining strain of tension, but it was unfortunately replaced with awkwardness. It's odd that you and I live in the same county as one another, I said. Is it? And that there are none others like us in all